Come out of the world, oh my people, seek the truth, avoid the evil, learn Yahweh's ways, Torah life. All right, everybody, we're going to start with this coming week's Torah Parashah, and it's going to be, each week we're going to go through the Torah, and we're going to join communities all around the world that read the Torah Parashah, and you don't have to do this in order to understand the Torah, but it certainly helps, and I definitely recommend it. And when I started doing this, it definitely opened up my eyes to a whole new understanding of the scriptures. And there's a scripture that says, "Open my eyes so I may see wonderful things in your Torah." And that's where we are this morning. So this morning's reading is Parashah, which is Parashah 37. It's the 37th reading in the cycle of the yearly Torah, which starts right after Sukkot and goes all the way throughout the year, starting in Genesis and going all through the book, all the way to Deuteronomy. So this week we're up to Numbers 13:1 to 15:41. And this we see here is a very common story, or a very popular story for those that study the Bible. And it's when the Israelites had already left Egypt, and they were in the desert, and they were coming upon the land that they were told would be the promised land, the land of Canaan. And they were told before they go in there, they were going to, Yahweh told Moses to send some spies in there to spy out the land and to see exactly how the land was. And we're going to pick it up here in Numbers 13:18, where it says, well, 13:17 goes on to say, after the men were picked from each tribe of who to go, it says Moses sent them to the land of Canaan, instructing them to go on living there in the Negev into the hills and see what the land is like. Notice the people living there, whether they are strong or weak, few or many, and what kind of country they are living in. Is it good or bad? Well, that's kind of the report that we have when we move somewhere as well. We are to go there and see what the people are like, to see what the city's like, the town's like, the places like. And if we're going to work somewhere at a job, that's the attitude we need, is to see what it's like. But the key is, when it says to see whether it is good or bad, what are we measuring that standard up to? You know, because what the world calls good, Yahweh calls bad, and vice versa. So here's where the confusion comes in, is, you know, what are we measuring that standard up to? Is it good or bad? And this is a big problem we have in today's world. When you go to a new church, you need to see and treat it the same way. You know, is it good or bad? What are you measuring up to? How are the people there? Are they moral or immoral? Are they meeting my standards? Are they going against my standards? And if we measure this up to Yahweh's word and not the words of the world, you know, it'll make a big difference on how our time is going to be there. But it goes on to show, when they came back with the report, or when they were there looking, what kind of land it was. And three of the things it said they had there in the report, as it says in Numbers 13:23, when they came back, there were three things that they reported. Clusters of the many things they reported. Clusters of grapes, pomegranates, and figs. Clusters of grapes, pomegranates, and figs. Well, that means that the land was very fertile, and they were able to grow a lot of fruits and vegetables. And it says a lot about the people there that were growing these things. So they were growing grapes, pomegranates, and figs. Well, the pomegranates and figs showed that they were a very prosperous land and growing a lot of fruits for their diet. The clusters of grapes show that they had a lot of wine available. And with wine can be good things, but can also be bad things. But it just shows that the land was very fertile.
But when it came time for the report, all the people that were sent there gave a very negative report, a very fearful report. But it was Caleb that had the heart of Yahweh and the understanding of why they were sent there, and said, there is no question we can conquer it. No question at all. So he saw things in a different light than those that gave the negative report. There is no question we can conquer it. See, when Yahweh sends us to do something, he already promised the land to them. He already told them this will be your land. So we shouldn't doubt what he's already given us. And this was the problem with the people. But Caleb said, no, there's no question. You gave us this and we will conquer it. And there's no questions about it. But the people didn't want to listen to him. It says here in Numbers 14:2, the people of Israel began grumbling against Moses and Aaron. And they started grumbling, talking about, why'd you send us here to die? We're not going to conquer this land. We're going to be destroyed. This isn't really the promised land. This is the land that where it's going to come to our end. We should have just stayed in Egypt. Over and over again, it shows them how they were mumbling and going against what Yahweh had told Moses. And this is why they never actually went into the promised land. Listen, the land was called promised for a reason. When Yahweh made that covenant with them, he promised to them. When Abraham was there many, many years before, the land was promised to them, and Yahweh cannot break his promise. But this is why the people wandered in the desert for 40 years and got chance after chance in Yahweh's mercy to stop grumbling, but they didn't. And guess who was the only one that came out of Egypt and went into the land? It was Joshua and Caleb, the ones that said without any question, Yahweh will give us this land, and we will conquer. We will conquer those that are there. But it says here in Numbers 14:5, it goes on to say, Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before the entire community of the people of Israel. Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Phunan, from the detachment of the land that they have just came back from, tore their clothes and said to the whole community of Israel, the land we passed through in order to spy it out is an outstanding good land. If Yahweh is pleased with us, then he will bring us into the land and give it to us, a land flowing with milk and honey. Just don't rebel against Yahweh, and don't be afraid of the people living there. We'll eat them up. Their defense has been taken away from them, and Yahweh is with us. Don't be afraid of them. That there sums up everything we need to understand when we become a believer and we have to enter the world of the non-believers. He has promised it to us, and as long as we stick to what he has said, he will be pleased with us and he will give it to us. What will he give us? A land flowing with milk and honey, a very prosperous place, a very fertile land. Just don't rebel against him is the warning. Just don't rebel against him. How many times do we doubt him, do we rebel against him? Every single time we make a complaint about our circumstances, we're rebelling against Yahweh. And instead of him being pleased with us, his anger flares. Don't be afraid of the world. Don't be afraid of the pagans. Don't be afraid of the Gentiles. Don't be afraid of the non-believers. Yahweh has promised us a fertile land flowing with milk and honey, and he is pleased with us when we follow his word. We need to understand that. We need to believe that. We need to read that every single morning so we never forget that. But what is the reality of the world? The reality of the world is just like the whole community here in this situation. And this is a great example of what's going on in the world today. It goes on to say that the community tried to stone them for giving this positive report. Tried to destroy them because they were worried and they were fearful, and they said, no, we're going to be destroyed when we go into this land. And they did everything that they were told not to do. and showed not to do. They lost faith in Yahweh. They worried about the people. They were afraid of them. And they thought that this was their end. So they were calling Yahweh a liar. They weren't pleasing him. And they were being afraid of them. Everything opposite than they were told how to react. And Yahweh said to Moses in Numbers 14:11, how much longer will they not trust me, especially considering all the signs I have already showed them? How much longer will we doubt him? How much longer will we go against him and not trust him? And he showed us so many more signs today than he showed the people back then. Back then, it was the amazing signs of coming out of Egypt. Today, it's thousands of years of amazing signs and miracles. How much longer will we go on not trusting him? And then what was his outcome for the people that don't trust him? He says in Numbers 14:12, I am going to strike them with what? Sickness. Those that do not trust me will be stricken with sickness, disease, wasting disease. What is the consequence of us suffering sickness besides our physical lifestyle of living against his word? Spiritually, not trusting him, he says, I am going to strike them with sickness and destroy them. So we have to understand when we are suffering a sickness, there's many different areas for this. One of the areas is, hey, we're not doing something he told us to do physically. We're not eating the food, we're not living the lifestyle, and we've taken upon our sickness. Another reason is we lost trust in him. We've went against his instructions and guidelines, and he's put sickness on us. And then there's the fear of the world instead of the fear of him. Sickness will be on us. But it's not only the unrighteous. Sometimes the righteous sickness will be like the blind man. Who sinned so this man was blind? No one. It was for the glory of Yahweh to show his healing powers. So if everyone out there, it's not all of you that are stricken with sickness or some disease that shows your unrighteousness and your distrust. Some of you, he wants you to experience sickness, maybe to humble you, or maybe to show people around you something. But the majority of people out there that are distrusting him, going against his words, living a lifestyle against the instructions he told us to live, sickness will come upon you because of your own consequences. But the great news is just because the consequences of what you've done, the consequences can be reversed based on your actions. But it goes on here to say, when we fast forward, in Numbers 14:32, it goes on to say, you will be bearing the consequences of your prostitutions until the desert eats up your carcasses. Bearing the own consequences of you prostituting yourself to the world and the world's ways and disobeying my ways. So our sickness is not Yahweh's vengeance as much as it is a result of our own consequences. Our diseases are a result of our own consequences of the lifestyle we live and the choices we make. And just like we've been stricken with them, it can be reversed and we can be healed. And we need to see that and understand that, because many people today go the opposite direction. When they get sick, they lose faith even more in Yahweh and they put confidence in man. When many people get sick today, they start living an unhealthy lifestyle, even more so than more they should be going the opposite way. And the doctors and the answers of the doctors, and I live a life of studying this out. What the doctors are doing are not making the people better. Psychologically, they break you down and tell you you're going to die. They tell you your life is over, we could just prolong it with drugs. But the rates of healing, don't expect to live the same life you once lived. But Yahweh tells us there's a future and a hope, always, no matter where we are. I just read last night, somebody sent me a report of a cancer treatment where the rate of success is very high. And it was compared to the rate of chemotherapy, which is very low. And the FDA outlawed and banned the successful cancer treatment. And it was 40 years ago that this treatment was known to them. And the thousands and millions of people that have died from their cancer or from the chemotherapy could have been saved by doing this very successful method of healing, and also by reading the Torah and getting right with Yahweh's Word. But the FDA and the ways of the world try to keep us away as far as possible from these things that people can be healed with. And some people will claim, I shouldn't be talking about healing of diseases because, I'm not even allowed to talk about healing of diseases that doctors haven't found cures for these days. I could be thrown in jail for talking about cures of incurable diseases. You know what? Throw me in jail. Throw me in jail, because if that's what got me to jail, if there's anything that's going to put His protection over me, proclaiming His word, I don't want to go to jail. But there were many of the apostles and the disciples that didn't want to go to jail. And what happens when they were in the jail? Not only were they to proclaim the good news, but the doors were opened and they were set free. But on the other hand, I did read the Fox's Books of Martyrs, and they weren't just set free. They were tortured over and over again. And nobody in their fleshly desires want to go through that and be tortured that way. But only with His Spirit can we sustain that. And it's amazing, the thing I thought, and never forget about the Fox's Books of Martyrs. These people could have been easily set free by just saying and renouncing the ways of Yeshua. Like Daniel didn't have to go through all his trials by just saying, I'm going to bow to other gods. And these people gave up everything here in this earthly realm to say, I am never going to talk bad or talk against Yahweh. They suffered torture. They were teared and ripped apart from their families. Their own families were pleading with them to just say that you renounce the ways of the Scripture and to just go along with the ways of the church. They weren't even asked to renounce Yahweh in Fox's Books of Martyrs. They were just asked to renounce some of the ways that the church seen different. And he said no, because they knew. And what they went through, it shows how far we are from Him today, truly. Many of us. And when I say us, I don't mean us watching the video or listening to us right now. I see many of the world that proclaim Yeshua as the Messiah, but forget about being tortured instead of renouncing Him. Some people will renounce Him just to keep their worldly comforts. And it shows how far we've come. I highly recommend everyone read Fox's Books of Martyrs, because what it comes to when we're choosing the worldly comforts over His way, that's us prostituting ourselves to the world and not setting a good example for the way He wanted us to. When we're scared to lose our worldly comforts, the worldly comfort of the Israelites in the desert were the foods of Egypt. Even living in slavery, not to give up their foods. What happened, in essence, and the reason why they didn't go into the promised land, is they left Egypt, but Egypt didn't leave them. And this is a problem happens today when people accept Yeshua as their Messiah. They might have tried to leave the world's ways, but the world's ways hasn't left them. And they're continuing to do the same things in their actions. And it says here in these last two Torah portions, we have a choice. Yahweh could be pleased with us, and all that was promised, all the blessings we could take and enjoy, or His anger can flare up at us, and we'll be stricken with sickness and diseases. It goes on to say later in the Torah what those sicknesses and diseases will be. The wasting disease, the dryness of the bones. It goes on to say the famine of the land. Well, this is coming, folks. And it shows us here in the Torah how to overcome it. It's one answer: faith. But you can't have faith without action. You know, faith is an attitude and an action. And there's so many people today live against this. And these are the reasons why we continue to suffer. Even Moses, a man of amazing faith, because of his lack of following instructions, didn't go into the promised land. So we need to be well aware and not be distracted of what the scriptures are saying. But it goes on here to say in Numbers 15:14, it's not only the people of Israel that were held responsible to keep the instructions of guidelines and the faith of Yahweh. It says, if a foreigner stays with you, or whoever may be with you throughout all your generation, anyone in the community, the same guidelines for you is also for the foreigner living with you. The same Torah and standard of judgment will apply to both you and the foreigner living with you. And that is so powerful, because when somebody of the world today, even the so-called believers today, say, well, you know, that's not for us. We don't have to do that. And many of us can point to Acts 15 saying, no, they say you do have to do that. But forget about Acts 15 for a second and look at what it said just right here. The same Torah and standard of judgment will apply to both you and the foreigner living with you. To anyone that proclaims Yeshua as the Messiah, the same standard and judgment will apply for both of you, for all foreigners in the land. And that is a powerful thing, because there are many people that later on decide to accept Yeshua as Messiah and want to be part of this living Torah and think that they no longer have to keep the instructions and guidelines of the Torah. Well, they will suffer the same consequences as they were told right back there. But looking at this here, we come to a very controversial or misunderstood thing, which is very clear in scriptures, and that is something that we talk about here at Torah Life Ministries always, and that is how we are to appear and how our clothing is supposed to remind us and remind other people of where we come from and who we are. And I, for many years, wasn't convicted of doing this and didn't do it until I started reading these very scriptures. This scripture in particular, I'm going to read right now, which is Numbers 15:38. And it says, speak to the people of Israel, instructing them. And by the way, the people of Israel are those not only in the community of Israel, but even the foreigners. Anyone who accepts Yeshua as their Messiah are the people of Israel. Throughout all their generations, it says in Numbers 15:38. Speak to the people of Israel, and let me translate that. Speak to anyone who has ever accepted Yeshua as Messiah throughout all generations, to make tzitzit on the corners of their garments, and to put with them tzitzit on each corner a blue thread. And it says, it is to be a tzitzit for you to look at, and thereby remember Yahweh's commands and obey them, so you won't go around wherever your own heart and your eyes, your fleshly desires, to prostitute yourselves. But it will help you remember and obey all the commands and be set apart for Yahweh. I am Yahweh your Elohim, who has brought you out of the land of Egypt, or out of slavery, or out of Babylon, or out of the world, or out of the way of the Gentiles, or out of the church today that's the followers of Constantine, in order to be your Elohim. I am Yahweh, your Creator. So he talks about how we are to dress, the garments we are supposed to wear, but also the tzitzits at the edges of our clothes, as a reminder. I wasn't convicted of this when I became a believer of Messiah. I had to read this scripture right here to realize that it is not legalism, because we are commanded throughout all our generations to wear these tzitzit, as they're known as, with a blue cord, to remind us of what He's done for us. And one of the greatest translations of scriptures I ever read was the Power New Testament by William Morford. And I sell it on my website. He has a word in there, it's continuously. Continuously remember what we are to be doing throughout all our generations. Continuously never forget what Yahweh has done for us. And that's what these are for. These tzitzit at the edges of our clothing is to remind us of these things. And it's not a legalistic thing. We are to please Yahweh, to remember what He's done for us. I remember my friend Rico Cortez, who's a guest on the Torah Life Ministries often, saying when he runs through an airport and he sees the immodest way these women are dressed today. You know, the worldly men will look at these women, but what does he do? He reaches down and he grabs his tzitzit. And it reminds him of Yahweh. And takes his mind off the worldly things. I grab mine all the time. When I'm praying, wherever I go, I'm always grabbing them. It's a great reminder. Anyone out there watching the video, or anyone here in this room listening to this teaching, if you haven't been convicted of this yet, please read the scripture over and over again. Speak to the people of Israel, anyone who has accepted Yeshua as Messiah, throughout all the generations. The corners of their garments is to have tzitzit, or these cords with the blue thread going through them, to remind them of Yeshua and to remind them of the commandments. And some people might say, that won't go with my dress of today's world. I promise you, you cannot wear, it's an oxymoron to wear tzitzit and to wear high heels and a mini skirt. It's an oxymoron to wear tzitzit and to live in a way that Yahweh did not want us to wear. If you have a struggle that, oh, these tzitzit won't look good with my half-cut shirt that's showing off my belly button, or the shirt that is showing off my cleavage, you know, it's not the tzitzit that are messing up your clothing. It's your clothing that's messing up Yahweh's guidelines and instructions. And that's not only for the women there. The men of the world, we're to carry ourselves a certain way. If you don't feel good wearing tzitzit, if you haven't been convicted by them, chances are you are dressing closer to the world's ways than more of Yahweh's ways. Chances are you have not yet established the importance of Torah in your mind and on your heart like we are commanded to do so. Folks, it's not an issue of salvation. It's an issue of pleasing Yahweh so we can receive His blessings in return. Some people will ask about, should women wear these as well as men? Well, it clearly says here, speak to the people of Israel, instructing them. It doesn't say the men of Israel. The Orthodox Jewish community will wear tzitzit without the blue cord going through them because they don't believe in Yeshua as Messiah. And they're not following Torah right here because they go so much on what they've added to the Torah. But it says right here to wear a blue cord. But speak to them, the men and the women and the children, to wear these. So there was a time where I wasn't convicted yet. Doesn't mean I wasn't a believer, but I hadn't read all the Torah. I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. Open my eyes so I may see marvelous things through your Torah. When you start wearing these, just like the head covering sets women apart, and somebody could look at a woman with a head cover and say, that woman is different than a woman of the world. Just like the tunic or the beard sets a man apart, and when somebody looks at a man with a beard and says something is different than that man, than the world. When a man is dressed modest or a woman is dressed modest, something is different. We are set apart. We are holy for Yahweh. Well, that's what the tzitzit shows us. It sets us apart from the world. How many of you want to be set apart from the world today? You know, we need to look the part. We need to live the part. We need to be the part. In all we do, throughout all our generations. Anyone that has accepted Yeshua as Messiah is considered Israel. And if you are Israel, we are to be set apart from the world in all our ways. We can't have one foot in the world and one foot out of the world. And that's what we try to do when we say, well, we accept him as Messiah, but we want to dress and look a different way. Don't take my word for it. Before somebody out there starts saying Paul's a legalist, you look at the scriptures and you say what the scriptures say. If I'm a legalist, then Yeshua's a legalist. If I'm a legalist, then Jeremiah's a legalist. No, I'm a Torah observant pleaser of Yahweh. Because I want to accept the promises that he promised Israel. And I want to go into the promised land that's waiting for us. And if you do too, you're going to look the part, you're going to dress the part. And you're going to read all of the Torah. And you're never going to change that. So that's the Torah portion we see this week. And remember, we need to go through it. Whatever schedule you want to follow. But it's definitely recommended to go each week through the Torah portion. So that's this week's Torah commands of Yahweh. Does anyone have any questions about this or any of the Torah portion for this week or any of the Torah portions?
Come out of the world, oh my people, seek the truth, avoid the evil, learn Yahweh's ways.